All right. So today will be pretty short. We'll go over some basics about IRB applications, and then I'll just let you work in groups. So announcements for online students. If you want to engage in class discussion, you can just type in the chat, and when I check it, I'll let you know you can unmute your mic. I think we did something similar to this last time where it worked pretty well, so I'll just keep doing this. Okay. Okay, so for today's agenda, we're going to go over IRB application, which is the Institutional Review Board. So Institutional Review Board, this is a committee that makes sure the research in school are ethical. We have two examples of unethical research here. One is the Stanford prison experiment, and the other one is the US twin study. Does anyone know anything about this? Two examples? Yeah?
Was the Stanford prison one where like they took a bunch of students and they make some of them like prisoners and then some of them like police officers and then
Yes.
all of them happened?
Yes. So do you know why is it unethical?
Because they ended up abusing each other.
Yes. So they end up abusing each other.
Didn't they like not let them leave?
Yes. So they didn't let people leave when they wanted to leave. Yeah. So it turns out there were long-term effects afterwards. So it was not very good. So basically, when you are given a role with power, sometimes you just abuse the power, and especially when there's a group of people doing the same thing. Remember what that's called? We kind of mentioned it in previous class. When people engage in riots, violent behavior. Yes.
Is that de-individualism?
Yes, very good. So the individualization is when you lose your self-identity in a group, and then you engage in groupthink. You blindly follow what people do. So here, it's also like that. We have a bunch of prison guards who like to abuse the so-called prisoners, but they're also participants, and then you're more likely to engage in those abusive behavior. Very good. So any questions on the Stanford prison experiment? Okay. If you're not familiar with this study, I linked it here. You can just click the link, and then it leads you to a movie trailer, because they made a movie out of this. It's pretty cool. And then we have the US twin study. Anyone know about this? Kind of. Yeah, so this is another study that's conducted here, I think at Yale University, I think. And they made a documentary or a movie out of this as well. I'm gonna just tell you the plot, so I don't really like spoil the whole thing. Basically, is that they had twins or kids that they were born together. They separate them, and then they send them to different families who adopt them, but they don't tell them they have a brothers or sister, and then they do family visits once a while to observe their behavior and see whether the culture has a bigger influence on their genetics. Do you know why that's unethical?
Is it like because there's more harm than good?
Yes. Why is that?
Because like you're separating children from their families and like potentially like impacting their growth and development without a clear benefit or like justification.
Um, yes. So the so when they separate the kids from their family, it's not like they just take the kids from the parents. I think it's the parents they abandon the kids at first, and then the government or the child care system took the kids, and then it happened to be twins. They will just put them up for adoption. When people are adopting them, they don't tell the parents they're actually twins here, and they only let them adopt one. They kind of selected the families as well. They sent some kids to like a poor family, and then a middle class family, and then a rich family. So it should be pretty straightforward. That's unethical, right? You can't really choose people's future, and you can't choose it for them. Also, if they know that they have a brother or sister, their childhood or their teenage years will be so different, right? Okay, so this is pretty much they just didn't give consent to the participants, nor the parents. So there were some unethical research as done in the past. Do you guys know any other examples that involving unethical research? It doesn't have to be like psychology per se, but research in general.
The syphilis study count?
Could you explain that?
It was like in, I think it was like the 1930s or 40s,
Mhm.
Alabama, like they recruited a bunch of African American men, and doctors like gave them medicine and said that they were like treating syphilis.
Mhm, mhm,
And then like some of it was real medicine and like some of it was like bad blood that was infected with syphilis and it like led to a bunch of them dying.
mhm. Mhm. And what's the problem there? So, because right now we also have some trials like you give people traditional medicine, some placebo, which has no effect on people, and then some potential new drugs that they think is effective. Um, what's the difference?
Like there wasn't consent given. They
Yes.
didn't consent to that treatment.
Yes, very good. So people didn't know. Very good, very good. Anything else? You guys know? Yeah, yeah.
Perhaps the shock experiment, when they're trying to figure out why so many of Germany soldiers would commit such atrocious crimes.
Mm-hmm.
So they would put them in a room and they'd say, I don't quite remember all of it, but they would, anytime the person in front of them would get something wrong
Mhm.
on a little quiz, they would shock them and they had the option of going higher and higher as
Mhm.
they got more things wrong. And there was a researcher behind them saying, you must continue, you must continue.
Mm-hmm.
So they could leave at any time,
Mm-hmm.
but there was sort of gray area between the consent of that because it had good implications because it did learn that
Mm-hmm.
authority figures, you will follow whatever an authority figure says, even if it doesn't make sense, like
Mhm.
shocking a person to death, but at
Mhm.
the same time, those participants sort of, didn't feel like they could leave.
Mm-hmm. Very good. So I would just add a little bit details to that. So that's the Pilgrim study. We might talk about it in future classes. I cannot remember because I need to read through the textbook again and reorganize the lecture. But it's a pretty interesting study that it was after World War II. They wanted to learn why the Germans could be so cruel during the war. They just want to do this mass genocide, right? To Jews.
Why would
Yeah.
they commit such atrocious
Mhm.
war crimes and genocide and
Yes.
stuff?
So they wanted to study authority figures. Is it because most people just blindly follow authority instructions. So they did this study. In the experiment, no one really got shocked. It was a Confederate, which means like a help in the experiment. They pretended that they were shocked in a different room, but they could hear, they screamed from this kind of like the phone between telecom, is that how you call it?
I think so, yeah, it's a little speaker.
Mm-hmm. So they will ask the real participant to, right, they will ask the real participant to shock the Confederate, which they don't know. If they answer something wrong, and they gave them very difficult questions, of course they get it wrong all the time. So the votes increases from mild to like severe and then deadly. A lot of participants, I forgot the percentage.
It was a very large percentage.
I think it was over than 70%.
Yeah, it was like over 70.
Yeah, at least 70% of participants will go all the way to deadly voltage to shock the Confederate. Some people display concern, but the researcher, which is the authority figure, just told them to continue, and they continued. So, do you know why that's unethical?
I'd say because the results were obviously impactful, but at the same time, they felt like they couldn't leave.
Mm-hmm.
And so they could, that even if they did, like you said, some expressed concern
Mhm.
about shocking another person, and I believe a few of them even said they did want to leave.
Yes.
But the researcher had that was like a scripted line, it was like
Mhm.
exactly repeated of something along the lines of you must continue for
Mhm.
the experiment or something.
So they didn't really force the participants to stay there, but they were being very coercive. They were like,
Yeah, yeah.
just continue. We have an authority here, just continue. So yeah, very good. So they didn't feel like they have a very good option whether they want to stay or leave the experiment. But also because the nature of the study is just harmful to participants, unless you're a psychopath, right? All right, so that's a program study. What else? So during World War II, a lot of people used human as experiment subjects, and they inject virus or bacteria on people. Do you know that? Yeah, so that's unethical, right? Okay, so there are a ton of unethical research examples in the past. That's why we have this to make sure what you're doing to your participants are ethical and you're not doing a lot of harm to them. Does that make sense? So that's why we're doing the IRB application. Okay. Okay, so we have consent form. Those are used to ensure that the participants are aware of what they're agreeing to do and of any risk or cost that may exist. So in your consent form, you need to tell them, you guys read the consent form, right? Okay, you need to tell them, okay, are there any risks in your study, or are there any benefits? I think I gave you the script, did I? Okay, so you can kind of just follow that, but if you're doing some kind of unique study, you might need to think carefully or ask me before you actually give it to the participants. Okay, so you need to make sure they agree to participate in the study and they know that they can leave anytime if they feel uncomfortable. And they would need to sign this for you so that you don't get into legal problems later on. Then we have the manipulation checks. Those are used to make sure your manipulation worked. For example, I'm in this emotion lab. So what we do is we elicit different types of emotion and want to see what kinds of effects would that do on participants. However, we need to make sure we actually elicit the emotions. For example, when I show them the video, let's say, I feel like I gave you the example before, right? Did I? Maybe not. Okay. False memories. So let's say I show you a clip that's 2 minutes long, and we have, how many people we have here? Let's say 20. And then out of the 20 participants, some of them might have felt the emotion, some of them might not, right? So I want to do this. After showing you the video, I will ask you from 1 to 10, how would you rate your emotion right now? Of love, of desire, of happiness, sad. That's one way to assess their emotion afterwards, and we can use that as a manipulation check to see whether the manipulation worked. So that's just one example. If you're doing other manipulations, you will need to find different ways to measure that. And it helps to analyze your data because if you have people, let's say if you have half of the people that didn't find the manipulation worked, you might need to change your method, right? You need to find a better video to induce that emotion. Right? Okay. Any questions on manipulation check? Okay. Good. And then we have the suspicion check. This is used to check whether participants are aware of your study intention. Do you know why? We kind of mentioned this before. It was at the same time, so either one.
Like if they guess what you're trying to study, then they might be like acting along with that.
Yes, very good, very good. What kind of bias is that? Anyone here remember what that was?
I
So,
don't remember the name, but I remember the concept.
so like,
So we try to help the
Yes.
researcher
yes,
unintentionally.
yes. I don't remember the name either. Well, so I don't think we're going to talk about this here. Do you guys know the difference between recognition and recall in memory? Okay. So in cognitive psychology, when we talk about learning and memories, we have the difference between recognition and recall. So recall is when you need to recall information from your memory without any hint. And then recognition is you're choosing from options. So multiple choice will be recognition. Short answer, fill in the blank, will be recall. So I'm not that for recall because that's more like memorization about the definition and the term. So I like recognition better. Maybe that's just my excuse for not remembering all the definitions. But well, as long as you know how it works, you should be fine on the exam. You should be able to recognize which option it is. Okay, that's one reason we want to have the suspicion check. What else? It's kind of similar to that. So that was trying to help the researcher, right? You're trying to play along with the game.
Like maybe they're trying to play against it.
Yeah, could be. Cynical people. What else? Yes.
They always try to make themselves look better. in the
Yes.
scenario.
Yes, very good. So when you ask them questions, they might lie about it. What's it called? Do you know what's the term for that? That's social desirability. It's pretty easy to remember. You desire to be social and then likable. All right. Yes. So to avoid bias, you normally include the suspicion check at the end of your research because you want them to experience the study first, right? If you ask them in the beginning, they haven't even exposed to any material, how would they know if I know about the study or the purpose of the study, right? Okay. And then at the end, we'll have debriefing. This is when you disclose detailed information about the experiment to your participants. It might seem a little contradictory because at first you need to have consent. You tell them what you'll be doing in the study, but at the end you're disclosing detailed information, which means there's something that you didn't tell your participants, right? Why is that? Why would you want to hide something from the participants? Or you want to make up a cover story?
You don't necessarily want to prime them to a response for your.
Yes. Yes. So you don't want to prime them. Do you have more detailed explanation to that? Like how would you prime them? Sure.
If you give them the full details from the very beginning, you may have those biases that they
Yes.
try to work with you or against you or social in a way that makes it desirable for them. While if you sort of give them the broader, this is what this is about, rather than the most detailed, where you can give the most accurate responses.
Very good. So let's say right now, if I tell you I'm studying the difference between love and sexual desire, versus I'm telling you I hypothesize that sexual desire will make people more impulsive. The second one is more specific, right? And when you are actually participating in the research, remember this bias called confirmation bias? You had this idea at the beginning, and then you're like, oh, that must be true. And then consciously or unconsciously, you're gonna comply to that hypothesis, and then you behave towards that direction. So that's why sometimes we don't want to disclose all the details to participants. Sometimes we even want to create a cover story. Like we lie to them what the purpose is about. Do you know why? Any guesses?
I have a question, because like, isn't the consent form like a legal form, so how can you
Yeah.
lie on it?
You don't like specifically lie about things. Well, see, that's a not a gray area, but you need to be very skillful about this. I'll give you one example. Also, I will give you the reason why we want to give them a cover story, to make it more realistic, so that they will behave more naturally. If I'm just telling you to do some like weird stuff without a background story, you might be like, why am I doing this? And you might not try your best, or so your behaviors might be altered if you don't find this realistic. I'll give you one example. We had this study that we tried to study frustration or kind of like anger. We will recruit participants, and then we would tell them this is a collaboration with the different departments, and if you do a good presentation, oral presentation, after 5 minutes, you get recruited to a different study, and you get paid like $40 for an hour of your participation. And then we tell them most people pass the test. And you know, doing a presentation is kind of stressful, right? You only have 5 minutes to prepare it, and then we tell them we have 3 judges behind the curtain. They're observing you, and then they're giving you scores. So that's kind of stressful. And at the end, doesn't matter how well they presented it, we'll tell them, unfortunately, you're the one of the few that didn't make it. And apparently it's pretty frustrating, right? You're like, most people did it, and some students, they try really hard, especially undergrads. $40 is not like just some kind of random money. It's well, it's significant for me. I don't know about you guys. So some people will try their best, and then after the efforts, they find out, oh, I didn't make it. They'll feel frustrated, and we want to observe that behavior. So definitely at the beginning, we'll tell them this color story, but at the end, we'll tell them, yes, we rejected everyone. The study did not reflect like any of your personal abilities or anything like that, so we don't cause any harm to participants. We don't like beat down their egos, or they don't feel defeated after the experiment. So there's a boundary, like there's something that you can't lie about, but we don't really have a specific code for every situation. My suggestion is that if you need to use a cover story, or if you need to use any kind of deception in your study, ask me first, so you don't get into trouble for that. All right, so that's the reason why sometimes we have cover story and we need to deceive the participants. All right, but at the end, you need to disclose all the information and all the details, and you need to tell them if you have any questions, please ask or communicate with you or me, because I'm kind of like in charge of the project. All right, that's it. Any questions? Online students? Good. All right, now I want you to work on your team project, and it's gonna be your assignment 2 as well. So part 2 of the assignment. That's your IRB application. When you finish, feel free to leave. So before you go, I'm gonna just give you the reminders now. We'll have our first exam next week. I think that's a Friday, right? Or a Wednesday, can't remember. Wednesday? Okay, so Wednesday, pretty close. So make sure you review for this, and then study in group. It helps you, or it motivates you, I guess, when you are in a group. And then the exam will be on eCampus, and it will be at the same time as our regular classes. If you didn't make it, there is no makeup for exam. So make sure you go on you don't have to be here, so you can go anywhere else, or stay home to work on your exam. Make sure you have stable internet connection, okay? If there's an internet problem, I would not give you the second chance, because it will be unfair to other students. You have more time to prepare, or you have seen the questions already. So make sure you have stable internet connection. So that's the pros and cons for doing this online. You have the risk. Or if you want to do it here, we can do that too. The most stable internet service I have that I know is on campus, when you have the wired, the Ethernet cord. That's more stable than Wi-Fi. Okay? So if you want to make sure, go take the exam in the library here. What else? Oh, it's not open book. So please do not search the question online. I don't think you can search it online because I'm making my own questions, but don't look up the definition, or just be honest. I can't find a way to proctor you guys. I'll just let you guys take the responsibility, and I will trust you guys on this. Any questions on exams? Yes?
I think you've covered that as it'll be a multiple choice, but
Mhm.
how many questions is it?
How many questions? I don't know yet. How many do you want?
The syllabus said 40.
40? 40 then. All right. 40. All right, 40 questions.
You said that the questions won't be definitions, so it'll be more like, here's a scenario, like
Mhm.
an example of, and your terms.
Yes, so it will be kind of different from the quizzes that you have taken. The quizzes are simple. They're just there to help you prepare for classes. But it was more similar to the iClicker questions that we had. It's like you read a scenario and then you try to analyze the situation and then you pick the best answer. Oh, again, please do not try to be a smart ass. Like, oh, this will also work. But here we are talking about most people in the US, right? Don't be like, well, not everyone's like that. Don't argue with me using that argument. It's not gonna work. However, if you think there's something that if you're confused about, feel free to come talk to me. In the past, I have had some students ask me about the questions, and then it turns out, well, the question's not well worded, or there could be confusion. I ended up giving them the points, but I didn't give it to everyone. It will take, because if you're lazy, you don't ask, you don't try to fight for it, you don't get it. So I encourage you, if you have questions, just come ask me. If you have a different view, ask me, and we'll talk about it. And I encourage that. Okay, that's it. Any other questions about the exam or your assignment 2? You good? All right, so go ahead, work on your own, and then feel free to leave at any time. So. Oh, and also ask questions early. Please ask questions early, because I know a lot of students, they will try to figure out things on their own, and then at the end they'll be like, oh, we'll be thinking about this, and then I give you the feedback, you try to change it. Sometimes you will just take more time, and then if it's a big mistake, you have to change the whole thing. So not necessary. Ask questions early. All right.
You all want to open it and listen at the same time. It's a word, but like, can't you convert a word?
Is it?
Yeah, so you open it, you're gonna edit it using Google Docs.
Okay.
Are you talking about the ARB?
The ARB.
We're working on,
I do.
I think it's the IRB.
IRB.
Yeah.
It's like the first one, though, right?
Yeah, it's the consent
Okay.
form, yeah.
Which
I opened it, I remember it last night.
It's similar to us.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, should we work on the ARB right now? So now we're doing with Iris on slide.
But like, the ARB is kind of our own thing that we have to work, like, so I don't want y'all to be like sitting there while we're like, working, so like we can work on a group on the other one.
Okay.
And we don't want that. That's what we call it in the beginning.
It's on Google Docs, right?
It's a word, but we'll make it into Google Docs.
Okay.
Everyone's got to do that. So the awareness check. Everybody's anyway, so I figure I would pop that in there.
Is one person gonna make it into Google Doc and then share it?
Do you want to do that again?
Yeah.
I was like, because I think you should be able to like add it to the shares on that Google Docs.
And I do want to get there for the like asking. So there's an article.
So it'll be the Team Thrive.
I think that would be nice.
Yeah, I'm never doing
All right, sorry for interrupt, but Zach asked a question. He asked if you can take the exam in person on Wednesday. How many of you want to take it in person? Because if it's not necessary, I don't want to come here. Oh, you want to?
I'll do it online though.
No, it's fine. So it'll be you and Zach. As long as there are more than one person. I'll come here. Online, he says online is fine. But nah, if you want to take it here.
It's not that.
Are you sure?
No, I'm sure, yeah.
I insist. Well, I'll do this. I'll come here. It doesn't matter if you guys come here or not. I'll work here on my own. But if you want to take it in person, because I know sometimes people want to take it in person. For me, I would like to take my exam in person as well. It's a better environment. It's quiet. It's also more consistent with all the other exam environments that I'll be doing. So I'll be here. It's up to you if you guys want to come here. All right. That's it. Go ahead.
Yeah,
It's called the IRB application. Yes.
Oh, did you send it?
yeah, now it's in the Google Drive.
So I'm thinking we could do like a week from the sure, see if that actually like primes them. Or and then also like one where they explain the rules before the game.
Mr. Wan. So for the IRB application, it shows that we need to have like 2 independent variables.
Oh, you don't have to.
You don't have to? Okay.
Good question. Good question. I forgot to mention that. Howdy! I'm sorry to interrupt again. So we have another good question. There's 2 independent variables in your application example form. You don't have to have 2 independent variables, or you can have 3. It's up to you, but you need to have at least 1 independent variable and 1 dependent variable. Very good question. All right.
So if I read one of the lines, since we had only talked about one.
Yeah.
Then after that, we can just look at them by ourselves.
Are we doing motivation levels too, or just self-esteem, like how we're gonna measure motivation? Okay, and then in the textbook, it talked about something called the Rosenberg self-esteem scale, and it's like the test to measure self-esteem that's already been established. I thought we just use that, and I'm excited.
Yeah.
So then,
I think that we should, I don't know if it's the same one, but the one where it's like, I am blank, I am blank. Like,
So this
we
one-
just have like 5.
This one is like one that's been used in a lot of studies,
Yeah.
and so it's like, I feel that I'm a person of worth, and then you like strongly disagree, and it tells you how to use the scale, and then like average it, so I think it's
Are we
nice
able
that
to
it-
use that and then maybe also like the 5 of the blank things? where-
Yeah, we can add on to it, I just thought this was nice because it's already like been developed, and so we know it's like reliable, yeah.
Yeah.
What's the purpose for the 5 statements that you guys are using?
So we're trying to do like self-affirmations and how that affects self-esteem.
Uh-huh.
So for one group, we're not gonna do anything, we're just gonna measure their self-esteem. And then for another one, we'll have them watch like a little like affirmations video, and then have them copy down like, I am worthy, I am like blank,
okay.
and then we'll have them do the little
Okay.
self-esteem.
So yeah, very good. So one thing to keep in mind is that you need to make sure 2 groups are in the study about the same period of time. So for the other group, they're not watching the video, they're not writing down the things. You need to find something for them to do. Or just tell them to sit there for 5 minutes, because the length of the study could be another variable, right? So think of a neutral condition. Maybe just ask them to sit there, meditate. I don't know. Think of a situation for them to do while the other group are doing other things. Or you can just do a pilot study on your own. How long would it take to watch the video and writing down the statements, and then you use that time for everyone.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Do you think it'd be better to do this study as like two groups, like a two sample t-test, or do a matched pair study where it's like they take the test and then they do the stuff and they take the test again?
Like, are you trying to figure out whether you want to use two dependent samples, or you want to use one sample but do both?
Yeah, I didn't know if you think that'd be better.
It's, in my opinion, it's definitely using different participants would be great. So independent.
Okay.
Not dependent, I'm sorry. It should be independent. The two samples should be independent. Because, well, so let's say I'm asking you about your self-esteem without watching any videos. And then when you finish that, I ask you to watch this video and then ask you about the self-esteem. It's pretty obvious what my intention is, right?
Yes.
And then, be like, oh yeah, my self-esteem is higher after watching the video, so yeah. Yep. Oh, you guys can keep talking, just like.
You just wanna make sure our script is like, okay.
Okay, all right.
So we're gonna like, try to pick people rock, paper, scissors.
Oh, do you want to say it in public, like in front of everyone, or do you want to just?
We're not gonna use this, We're not. Okay.
All right.
And we're gonna try.
Technically, when we have two independent variables, if we're using self-affirmation statements and individual video.
I think Or would the whole thing just encompass, like, would it just be self-affirmation?
Wouldn't the motivational videos be the independent variable? And
I'll come over.
Self-affirmation is the dependent? Because whether they watch the video or not,